I was 10 years old on a family ski trip at a bustling resort nestled in the snowy mountains. It was the kind of place that felt magical to a kid. Slopes packed with skiers, the air sharp with cold, and the hotel lobby always buzzing with chatter and the smell of hot cocoa. My dad's stepmom and 3 sisters were with me, and we'd spent the morning tearing down the beginner trails, laughing every time one of us wiped out in a puff of snow. But by late afternoon, my sister Ava, 11, just a year older, and always acting like she was in charge, started complaining about the cold. My fingers were numb too, so we begged to head back to the hotel for food and warmth. Dad and my other sisters wanted to keep skiing, but my stepmom, Karen, said she'd meet us at the hotel restaurant after one more run. "Don't wander off," she warned, her voice firm but kind. Ava and I trudged through the snow, our ski boots clunking against the polished floors of the hotel lobby. The restaurant was cozy with wooden tables and a big fireplace crackling in the corner. We ordered hot chocolate and fries, giggling as we tried to warm our hands on the mugs. Karen joined us soon after, her cheeks flushed from the slopes. "You two okay?" she asked, sliding into the booth. We nodded, but our heavy ski jackets were making us sweat now. "Can we run upstairs to drop these off?" I asked, tugging at my puffy coat. "We'll be quick." Karen hesitated, then agreed. Straight to the room and back. "I'll hold the table." We took the elevator to the 5th floor. The hum of the machinery, the only sound. The hallway was long and quiet, the carpet muffling our steps. Our room was at the far end, and we were halfway there when I heard a voice behind us. "Hey." It was low, almost a growl. I froze, my heart doing a little flip. Ava kept walking, so I figured it wasn't for us. We were just kids, after all, who'd be talking to us. But as we reached our door, and I fumbled with the key card, the voice came again closer. "Hey, I'm talking to you." I turned, and there he was, a man standing in the hallway, blocking the light from the sconces. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with a lanky frame that seemed to loom over us. His face was weathered, like he'd spent too many years in the sun, and I guessed he was in his late 50s or early 60s. He wore a uniform that looked like the hotel staff's navy jacket, black pants, but something was off. There were no logos, no name tag, just plain fabric that didn't quite fit right. And then I saw his hands. Black surgical gloves, shiny and tight, like something from a hospital. My stomach twisted. Who wears gloves like that to work at a hotel? Ava grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Us?" she asked, her voice small. The man nodded, his eyes locked on us. They were pale, almost gray, and didn't blink enough. "Yeah, you?" he said, stepping closer. "I need a favor. Can you take a picture for me? And maybe come to my room to pour some water?" His tone was casual, but it felt rehearsed, like he was reading from a script he didn't quite believe. Our parents had drilled stranger danger into us since we could walk. Never talk to people you don't know. Never go anywhere with them. And this guy, he was setting off every alarm in my head. The gloves, the weird request, the way he stood too close. It was all wrong. Ava shook her head. "No thanks," she said, trying to sound polite but firm. I nodded, clutching the keycard tighter. His face changed just for a second. A flash of annoyance, like we'd ruined his plan. "It'll only take a minute." He pressed his voice sharper now. "Just pour some water in my room." "Come on." He gestured down the hall toward a door that was slightly ajar. The darkness beyond it made my skin crawl. "No," I said, my voice louder than I expected. "We're good." He didn't like that. His jaw tightened, and he took another step close enough that I could smell him, something sour, like old sweat. "It's not a big deal," he said, but his eyes were cold, calculating. Ava and I backed toward our door, our shoulders brushing. We kept saying no over and over, as he kept pushing, his voice growing more insistent. The back and forth dragged on for what felt like forever, probably 3 minutes. But to us, it was an eternity. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might burst. Finally, I found my courage. "Sir, we're good," I shouted, shoving the door open. Ava and I stumbled inside, and I slammed it shut, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the deadbolt. The click of the lock was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. We stood there, backs against the door, breathing hard. "What was that?" Ava whispered, her eyes wide. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we'd just dodged something bad, really bad. We stayed in the room for maybe 10 minutes, too scared to move. We'd left our phones downstairs with Karen, so we couldn't call anyone. Ava peeked through the peephole, her face pressed against the door. "He's gone," she said, finally, but her voice was shaky. We didn't trust it. We grabbed our jackets, bolted down the hallway, and took the stairs, 2 at a time, too freaked out to wait for the elevator. The restaurant was a blur of noise and warmth, and we practically threw ourselves into the booth where Karen was waiting. "Mom," Ava blurted, her voice cracking. There was this guy I cut in the words spilling out. We told her everything. The man, the gloves, the creepy request to go to his room. Karen's face went from confused to horrified. She grabbed our hands, pulling us close. "You're okay," she said, but her voice trembled. "You did the right thing." She marched us straight to the hotel's security office, her grip on us like iron. The security guard, a tired-looking guy with a clipboard, listened as we described the man. Tall, old gray eyes, no logo on his uniform, black surgical gloves. He scribbled notes, his brow furrowing. "We don't have cameras in the hallways," he said, which made my stomach drop. "And no one matching that description works here. Most of our staff are college kids, early 20s. He paused, looking at us. "You're sure about the gloves?" We nodded, and his expression darkened. "I'll pass this to the police. You two stay with your parents." Back at the restaurant, Karen didn't let us out of her sight. Dad and my sisters came down from the slopes, and when we told them what happened, Dad's face went stone cold. He spent the rest of the trip checking the locks on our door every night. We didn't see the man again, but the fear stuck with me. What if we'd said yes? What if I'd gone to pour water in his room? The thought made my blood run cold. Years later, I realized how close we'd come to something unthinkable. At 10, I didn't fully grasp it, but now I know that man wasn't hotel staff. He was a predator, and we were lucky to get away. I'll never forget his eyes, or the way those gloves gleamed in the hallway light, and I'll never stop being grateful for the instincts that told us to run. When I was 16, I started waiting tables at a small diner in our sleepy Midwestern town to pay for gas for my beat-up old Honda. The job was hectic, spilling coffee on my apron, dodging cranky customers, and balancing trays of burgers and milkshakes. But it was mine, and I loved the independence it gave me. That's where I met him, the guy I later called Mr. Creep. Back then, in my naive teenage mind, he seemed harmless at first, just another face in the crowd. He was 20, a dishwasher, who worked the evening shift with a lanky frame, greasy hair, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. His name was Derek, but Mr. Creep fit him better after what happened. At first, Derek was just overly friendly, lingering by the counter to chat when I was refilling ketchup bottles. He'd compliment my smile or ask about my day, and I'd brush it off thinking he was just awkward. But then he started pushing, asking me out, saying we should hang out after work. I was a kid barely old enough to drive, and the idea of a 20-year-old pursuing me felt wrong, like a line had been crossed. I'd laugh nervously and change the subject, but his persistence made my skin crawl. Leaving the diner after dark was the worst part of the job. The parking lot was poorly lit, just a flickering street lamp, casting shadows on the cracked asphalt. I'd seen enough true crime shows to be paranoid, so I taught myself a routine sprint to my car, slide in, shut the door, and lock it in one fluid motion. It was my safety ritual, a way to feel in control. One night, about a month into the job, I was exhausted after a double shift, my feet aching as I fumbled with my keys. I made it to my car, did my routine, and exhaled, thinking I was safe. Then, out of nowhere, Derek was there, his hand yanking at my door handle. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. The lock held, thank God. But he kept tugging his knuckles white against the handle. I looked up, and for a split second, our eyes met through the window. His face broke into a smile, slow and deliberate. But his eyes, God, his eyes were empty, like staring into a void. There was something evil there, a cold, predatory glint that chilled me to my core. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe until he let go and stepped back, raising his hands like it was all a joke. Just wanted to say good night. He called through the glass, his voice muffled but mocking. I didn't wait to respond. I jammed the key into the ignition and peeled out my hands, shaking so badly I could barely steer. From that night on, I was terrified of him. I never told him how much he scared me. I was afraid of what he might do if I rejected him outright. Derek didn't let up. He'd lie to impress me, spinning stories about his connections or how he was destined for big things. He'd find excuses to be alone with me, offering to help carry trays to the back, lingering in the break room when I was there. My instincts screamed to stay away, so I did everything I could to avoid him, switching shifts, sticking close to other coworkers, never leaving alone. I felt like prey, always watching my back. About 2 weeks after the car incident, the diner got robbed. It was a Friday night, just after closing, when someone broke in, smashed the register, and made off with the cash drawer. The police came dusting for prints and asking questions, and word spread among the staff that there was evidence pointing to Derek. Maybe a partial print, maybe a witness who saw someone matching his description nearby. It wasn't enough to charge him, but it was enough to make everyone uneasy. I remembered his eyes that night by my car, and I knew deep down he was capable of it. I gathered every text he'd sent me, creepy messages about wanting to spend time together, vague boasts about knowing how to handle things, and forwarded them to the police chief. I don't know if they helped, but Derek quit the next day and vanished from town. I thought I was free, but I never stopped looking over my shoulder. Life moved on. I graduated high school, went to college, got a job, and tried to bury those memories. But Derek had a way of creeping back. 5 years ago, out of the blue, he messaged me on Facebook. His profile was a mix of military photos and hunting trophies, and his message was a rambling mess. Claims of a top-secret military clearance, boasts about owning hundreds of acres in some remote town, and a creepy invitation to catch up. My stomach churned. It felt like a trap, like he was testing if I'd bite. I blocked him and tried to forget, but the unease lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. Then today, everything came rushing back. I was scrolling through a local news page when I saw his mugshot staring back at me. Derek, older now, with the same dead eyes, was facing murder charges, first-degree murder, along with 2 other violent felonies, assault and armed robbery. The article didn't give details, just that the case was tied to an unsolved killing from years ago, recently reopened, thanks to new evidence. My hands shook as I read it, not from fear, but from a sick kind of relief. He was locked up finally, but the weight of how right my instincts had been hit me like a tidal wave. I think back to that night by my car, to the evil I saw in his eyes, and I realize how close I came to something terrible. I was just a kid, trusting my gut, doing what I could to stay safe. Knowing he's behind bars is a small comfort, but it doesn't erase the fear he planted in me, the way he made me question my own safety in a world I thought I knew. I hope he stays locked away forever, but I'll always carry the chill of that moment, the moment I saw who Mr. Creep really was. When I was 17, scraping together cash for gas money, I waited tables at a small diner in our sleepy town. The job was exhausting. Long hours, sore feet, and customers who sometimes forgot to tip, but it gave me a sense of independence. That's where I met him, the man I'd later call Mr. Creep. He was 20 too old to be chasing a high schooler, but in my naive mind, he seemed harmless at first. He'd linger at the counter, nursing a coffee, flashing a charming smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He'd ask about my shifts, my plans, and once boldly, if I'd go out with him. I brushed it off, laughing nervously, but something about his persistence felt off, like a shadow creeping closer. The diner's late hours meant I often left work after dark, the parking lot dimly lit and eerily quiet. The walk to my car became a gauntlet of nerves. I taught myself a ritual to feel safe, slide into the driver's seat, slam the door, and lock it in one fluid motion. The click of the lock was my shield, a small comfort against the unknown. One chilly night, as I performed this routine, Mr. Creep materialized out of nowhere. My hand was barely off the lock when he grabbed the door handle yanking it hard. My heart stopped. I looked up, and for a split second, our eyes met through the window. His smile was slow, deliberate, but his gaze, it was pure malice, a cold, predatory glint that froze my blood. I couldn't name the evil I saw, but it was real, and it haunted me. From that night on, fear clung to me like damp clothes. Mr. Creep didn't let up. He'd show up during my shifts, spinning wild stories to impress me. Tales of secret connections, shady deals, and a supposed inheritance that sounded like pure fiction. Worse, he'd engineer ways to catch me alone, offering to walk me to my car or help with closing duties. My instincts screamed to run, so I dodged him, switching shifts, sticking close to coworkers, and keeping my distance. I never confronted him, terrified of what he'd do if I rejected him outright. His lies grew bolder, his presence more oppressive, but I stayed silent, hoping he'd lose interest. 2 weeks later, the diner was robbed. Cash from the register vanished, and the back door was jimmied open. Whispers among the staff pointed to Mr. Creep, his odd hours, his sudden absences, and a vague story about needing money fast. The police investigated, but the evidence was circumstantial, not enough to charge him. Desperate to help, I forwarded every text he'd sent me to the police chief. Flirty messages, weird boasts, and cryptic comments that in hindsight felt like red flags. Mr. Creep vanished soon after leaving town, without a trace. I was relieved, but never fully at ease, always glancing over my shoulder, half expecting him to reappear. 5 years ago, out of the blue, he messaged me on Facebook. His words dripped with the same old bravado, claims of a top-secret military clearance, a sprawling estate he supposedly owned, and vague hints about wanting to reconnect. It felt like a trap, a lure to draw me in. My stomach churned as I blocked him, trying to bury the unease. Then, today, scrolling through local news, I froze. His face stared back at me from a mugshot linked to an unsolved murder case. He's now facing murder charges and 2 other violent felonies. Relief washed over me. He's locked up, but it mingled with a sickening awe at how right my instincts had been. That teenage girl who sensed his darkness was wiser than she knew. Fast forward to my mid-20s, I thought I'd left those old fears behind. But tonight, a trip to the grocery store brought them roaring back. It was around 5 p.m. Winter's early darkness, cloaking the town. The store was bustling shoppers, stocking up for dinner. I lingered in the cereal aisle, debating between sugary nostalgia and something healthier, when a man sidled up beside me. He was late 20s, maybe early 30s, light hair, glasses, a scruffy beard. At first, I barely noticed him, assuming he was just another shopper scanning the shelves. But after a moment, I realized he wasn't moving. No reaching for boxes, no browsing, just standing there, too close for comfort. I glanced at him, and my breath caught. He was already staring at me, his eyes locked on mine with an intensity that felt invasive. For half a second, I thought he might speak, maybe a clumsy pickup line or an innocent question. But he said nothing, just held my gaze, his expression unreadable, unnerved. I turned and speed walked to the next aisle, my heart thudding. Just an awkward guy, I told myself, shaking it off. Probably doesn't know how to talk to women. I focused on my list, grabbing pasta and sauce, trying to regain my calm. Barely 30 seconds later, I sensed movement in my peripheral vision. There he was again, striding down the new aisle, his eyes fixed on me. No cart, no items, just that unwavering stare. My pulse spiked. This wasn't a coincidence. I abandoned my cart and hurried toward the self-checkout, weaving through shoppers, my senses on high alert. At the scanner, I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting him to appear behind me. He didn't. Relief crept in as I bagged my groceries, convincing myself I'd overreacted. "You're paranoid," I muttered, heading for the exit. But as I stepped into the vestibule, I looked back one last time, and there he was, right on my heels. No groceries in his hands, no reason to be so close. Our eyes met again, and that same chilling stare pinned me in place. Instinct took over. I stopped dead, staring back, daring him to act. He faltered, dropped his gaze to his phone, and brushed past me, slipping out the door. My knees trembled as I watched him go, my mind racing. Why was he following me? What did he want? I could see my car parked close to the entrance, a small mercy. Fumbling for my phone, I called my fiancé, my voice shaky as I sprinted across the lot. I dove into my car, locked the doors, and scanned the parking lot. There he was, wandering aimlessly among the cars, no destination in sight. He was far enough that I felt a flicker of safety, bolstered by my fiancé's voice on the line. I watched him for a few seconds, his figure weaving through the shadows before peeling out of the lot, my heart still pounding. Who was he? A socially awkward guy who didn't know better. A predator sizing me up. A thief eyeing an easy mark. The questions gnawed at me. He hadn't been subtle each time I caught him. He was already staring, unapologetic, unafraid. of being seen. A true predator, I reasoned, would be stealthier, less obvious. And why leave the store empty-handed? I'd been in the store for 5 minutes before noticing him, so he likely hadn't followed me in. Yet nothing about his behavior felt random. The memory of Mr. Creep's eyes, that bone-deep evil, resurfaced, and I wondered if I'd just dodged another bullet. I'm safe now. But the encounter lingers a puzzle I can't solve. My instincts, honed by that long-ago diner job, screamed danger, and I listened. But the uncertainty, whether I was paranoid or perilously right, keeps me awake, checking the locks and wondering what might have been. In the summer of 2021, I was a 16-year-old navigating a world turned upside down by the pandemic. Schools had shifted online, but with a crucial exam looming, I had to venture out to collect notes from my teacher. I'm 18 now, looking back on an afternoon that still sends a shiver down my spine. My parents were strict about me going out. My sense of direction was shaky at best, and the city's maze of streets overwhelmed me. But my teacher's house was just 3 kilometers away, along the familiar route to our old apartment, so they reluctantly agreed. What should have been a quick errand turned into an encounter I'll never forget. It was around 3:30 p.m., the sun still high, but casting long shadows across the quiet streets. The pandemic had emptied the city, shops were shuttered, and only a handful of people passed by their faces, hidden behind masks. I'd finished at my teacher's a stack of handwritten notes tucked into my backpack, and decided to stop at a polka stall on the way home. Polka, a cheap, spicy snack beloved in our country, was a childhood favorite. And the stall's shopkeeper, Mr. Rao, had known me since I was a kid. His warm smile and easy chatter were a comfort, and I figured a quick bite would break up the walk. The stall was a small wooden cart, its counter piled with bowls of crispy polka dusted with chili powder. I leaned against it, munching and catching up with Mr. Rao about school and the strange locked-down world we were living in. The street was nearly deserted, the usual bustle replaced by an eerie stillness. I was halfway through my snack when I felt a light tug on my ponytail. My heart jumped, and I spun around, startled. Standing behind me was an old woman, probably in her 60s or 70s, her clothes tattered, and her hair a matted gray tangle. She smiled, her teeth stained and uneven, and asked in a soft, raspy voice if I could buy her some polka. She looked homeless, her thin frame swallowed by a faded shawl, and I felt a pang of sympathy. I didn't have much money, barely enough for my own snack, but I couldn't bring myself to say no. Sure, I mumbled, glancing at Mr. Rao. He nodded kindly and scooped the rest of my polka into a paper cone for her. She thanked me, her eyes crinkling, and I thought that was the end of it. I turned to leave, ready to get home before my parents started worrying, but then I felt her hand close around my right wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her fingers bony but unyielding. "God bless you, child," she said, her voice warm but oddly intense. "If I could see my granddaughter, she'd be just like you." I forced a smile, nodding awkwardly. Her words were kind, but something about her tone and the way she held my wrist felt off. I tried to gently pull away, but she tightened her grip, her nails digging slightly into my skin. She launched into a story, her words tumbling out in a rush. She spoke of raising her daughter and son, of a wealthy but cruel husband who drank heavily and beat them. She described enduring his abuse for the sake of his money, only for him to gamble it all away, fall into debt, and die of liver failure. Her children, now grown and married, had turned their backs on her, she said, resenting her for staying with their father. Now she was alone, homeless, with nothing left. Her story was heartbreaking, and I felt for her. But as the minutes stretched on, unease crept in. The sun was dipping lower, and I was acutely aware of how late it was getting. My parents would be furious if I wasn't home soon. The woman's body language was strange. Her eyes darted nervously, and her free hand gestured wildly as she spoke. She stood too close, her breath sour and warm against my face. I nodded politely, trying again to free my wrist, but she held fast her grip like a vice. Then she shifted gears, asking where I lived. Caught off guard, I blurted out the name of our neighborhood, instantly regretting it. Her smile widened, and she asked for my dad's name. I hesitated, but gave it, hoping to keep things friendly. To my surprise, she claimed to know him, describing a man who sounded nothing like my father, taller, with a different job, a different demeanor. Alarm bells rang in my head. I looked more like my mom. How could she know my dad? The conversation took a darker turn. She insisted on taking me to her home to share some sweets as a thank you for the polka. Her earlier story about being homeless, abandoned, flashed through my mind. Where was this home? Why was she so insistent? Fear prickled my skin. "I have to go," I said, my voice shaky. "My parents will be mad if I'm late." I yanked my wrist harder, but she resisted, her fingers tightening. No, she said, her tone sharp now. "You must come. I have sweets for you." She tugged me toward a narrow, shadowed lane beside the road, its entrance swallowed by darkness. My heart pounded. This wasn't right. I planted my feet, pulling back with all my strength. I can't. I insisted, my voice rising. She didn't let go, her eyes narrowing as she tried to drag me forward. Panic surged through me. I twisted my wrist, using every ounce of force I had, and finally broke free her nails, scraping my skin. Without looking back, I bolted my backpack, bouncing against my shoulders as I sprinted down the street. The polka stall, Mr. Rao, the empty shops all blurred past me. My lungs burned and sweat stung my eyes, but I didn't stop until I reached our apartment building. I fumbled with my keys, my hands trembling, and stumbled inside, slamming the door behind me. My parents were waiting, their faces a mix of anger and worry. "Where have you been?" my mom demanded. I collapsed onto the couch, my breath ragged, and told them everything the woman, her story, her grip, the dark lane. They were furious, both at me for staying out and at the situation. My dad checked my wrist, where faint red marks lingered, and my mom hugged me tightly, her voice shaking as she scolded me for being too trusting. I was shaken, my mind replaying the woman's eerie smile, her too strong grip, the way she'd tried to pull me into that alley. I didn't sleep that night, jumping at every creak in the apartment. For weeks, I avoided that route, taking longer paths to school, or staying home altogether. I never saw the woman again, but her face, those darting eyes, that unsettling smile stayed with me. I don't know what she wanted, but I'm certain it wasn't just to share sweets. That day taught me to trust my instincts to run when something feels wrong. I'm just glad I did. The summer air clings to my skin, heavy with the scent of fried eggs and coffee from the diner where I've just finished my shift. I'm 14, my sneakers crunching on the gravel outside the gas station, a cherry slushy cold in my hand. At the edge of the lot, a teal vintage car gleams under the midday sun, its curves like something from a movie set in the 60s. Inside, two figures watch me, an older man and woman, their faces half hidden behind tinted windows. Their eyes lock onto mine, unblinking, and a chill creeps up my spine, sharp and sudden, like a warning whispered by the wind. Something about them feels wrong, like they don't belong in this sleepy Wisconsin town. I live with my dad every other week in a tiny neighborhood of about 100 people nestled near a small lake in Wisconsin. Our house sits second from the top of a steep hill with the diner and gas station crowning the peak and a sandy beach stretching at the base. Everyone knows everyone here, Strangers stick out like a sore thumb. I've been waitressing at the diner all summer, saving up for new headphones, and the routine is comforting, serving pancakes, wiping counters, chatting with regulars. But today, as I sip my slushie and glance at that car, the world feels off-kilter. The couple inside doesn't move, doesn't wave, just stares. I shrug it off, telling myself they're probably just passing through, and start the walk home, the hill sloping gently beneath my feet. The diner sits off a quiet highway, rarely used by out-of-towners. Tourists don't come here. The lake's too small, the town too plain. That car, with its polished chrome and gleaming paint, doesn't fit. I wonder where they're from, what brought them here. Maybe they're lost, or maybe they're just curious about our little corner of the world. I push the thought aside and focus on the walk, the sun warm on my shoulders, the slushy numbing my fingers. My younger brother Tommy is at the beach, probably building sandcastles or chasing minnows. We'd planned to hang out there all afternoon, soaking up the last days of summer before school starts. At the beach, Tommy and I splash in the shallows, the water cool against our skin. The hours slip by, laughter echoing across the lake until the sun dips lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. I pack up my towel and sunscreen, leaving Tommy to gather his things a minute behind me. The hill looms ahead, its slope familiar but tiring after a long day. I'm halfway up, my breath steady, when I hear the low hum of an engine behind me. My heart skips. I glance back, stepping to the side of the road, and there it is, the teal car, creeping closer, its chrome glinting like a predator's eyes. My stomach twists a knot of unease, tightening with every second. The car slows, almost stopping, and the passenger window rolls down. The woman leans out, her face catching the fading light, and my breath catches in my throat. She's wearing a mask, hyper-realistic, like something from a Hollywood makeup studio, but wrong. The skin looks too smooth, too perfect, with no wrinkles or blemishes for someone her age. Her eyes, though, are real piercing, glinting, with a sharpness that makes my skin crawl. The man in the driver's seat is the same, his face a flawless imitation of human skin, but there's no seam, no edge where the mask ends and reality begins. It's as if the masks are their faces, or their faces aren't theirs at all. My heart pounds, my slushy cup slippery in my sweating hand. "Excuse me, sweetie," the woman says, her voice syrupy, too sweet, like candy laced with something bitter. "Can you tell us how to get to Highway 47? I freeze. I don't drive yet. I'm only 14. But I know the roads around here. There's no Highway 47, not anywhere nearby. I point toward the highway, by the diner, the one that leads out of town, my voice shaky. Just head back that way, past the gas station. It'll take you out. She smiles, her lips stretching unnaturally wide, and the man nods, his eyes never leaving me. "Thank you, dear," she says, and the window rolls up. The car pulling away with a soft purr. I stand there, rooted to the spot, my pulse racing. The air feels heavier now, the hill steeper, the shadows longer. I turn and run to Tommy, who's trudging up the hill behind me, his towel slung over his shoulder. "Did you see that car?" I gasp my words, tumbling out. They were wearing masks, Tommy. Like weird masks. He frowns, confused. They looked normal to me when they drove by. Just some old people. I shake my head, my skin still prickling. They didn't look normal up close. The masks were too good, too real, but the eyes, those eyes were alive, watching me like I was something to be studied. When we get home, I tell Dad my words spilling out in a rush. He's in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili, and he just shrugs. Probably just eccentric folks passing through, he says, barely looking up. Don't worry about it. But I can't stop worrying. That night, I lie awake, the image of those faces burned into my mind, the smooth, unnatural skin, the eyes that didn't belong. I don't believe in ghosts or monsters, not really, but those masks haunt me. Why were they wearing them? Why ask a kid for directions to a highway that doesn't exist? Were they hiding something, or were they something else entirely? More than 6 years later, I still feel that chill when I think of them. Their car, a teal specter on the hill, their eyes watching me from behind those impossible faces. The neon sign buzzed faintly above the diner, its pink glow barely cutting through the midnight dark. Beyond the parking lot, the field stretched into shadow, a black void where the tree line whispered secrets to the wind. I stood by the dumpster, the air thick with the stench of grease and rot, when a voice sliced through the night, close, too close. "Hey girl, come here." My blood turned to ice. That was the moment I knew the yelling man wasn't just another drifter. He was hunting. I've worked the graveyard shift at this 24-hour diner for 2 years, long enough to know the rhythm of the night. The place is a beacon for the lost truckers with bloodshot eyes, drunks stumbling in from bars, homeless folks scrounging for scraps. Weird is part of the job. I've seen fist fights over cold fries, a woman crying to her coffee about a ghost, even a guy who paid his bill in pennies. But nothing prepared me for that night, when the field behind the diner became something more than just a patch of dirt and weeds. It was a slow shift, the kind where the clock seems to mock you. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and fryer oil, the jukebox silent for once. My cook, Jake, a burly guy with tattoos snaking up his arms, was scrubbing the grill, muttering about needing a smoke. I was wiping down counters, the rag damp in my hand, when we decided to step out back. The night was cool, the air sharp against my skin, and the field loomed just beyond the dumpster, its tree line a jagged silhouette under a moonless sky. We lit our cigarettes, the flame briefly warming my fingers, and leaned against the wall, the concrete rough through my apron. That's when we heard it. A voice faint, but unmistakable, carrying from the field. Someone was shouting the words, unclear, but edged with a raw, unhinged energy. Jake raised an eyebrow, exhaling smoke. Probably some vagrant, he said, his voice low. The town saw its share of homeless folks, most harmless, just passing through. We'd had them sleep behind the dumpster before curled up in tattered blankets, gone by morning. I nodded, trying to brush it off, but the shouting lingered in my mind, a splinter I couldn't ignore. We finished our smokes and went back inside the door's bell, jingling softly behind us. The next hour dragged. A couple of regulars came and went, their voices a dull hum against the clink of dishes. I was restless, the shouting still nagging at me, so I grabbed a bag of trash and headed for the dumpster. Stupid, I know. I hadn't heard the voice again, and the night felt quiet, almost safe. The parking lot was empty, the asphalt glinting under a single street light. I hefted the bag into the dumpster, the stink of rotting food hitting me like a wave, and turned to go back. Hey, come here. The voice was clear now, close, slithering from the field's edge. My heart stumbled. Hey girl, come here. It wasn't a shout anymore. It was a command, low and deliberate, maybe 30 feet away. I froze, my breath catching my eyes, straining into the dark. The field was a wall of shadow, the tree line swallowing any hint of movement. I backed toward the diner, my sneakers scuffing the gravel, and bolted inside the door, slamming behind me. Jake looked up from the grill, his spatula pausing. You okay? I spilled it. All the voice, the closeness, the way it felt like eyes were boring into my back. He frowned, wiping his hands on his apron, and grabbed his keys. Let's check it out. Our coworker, Sarah, who just clocked in, overheard and followed. She had a beat-up sedan with a spotlight mounted on it, the kind hunters use. We piled into the parking lot, the night air colder now, and she angled the car toward the field, flipping on the light. The beam cut through the dark, sweeping over grass and weeds, but it didn't reach the tree line. The field seemed empty, just swaying shadows and silence. Then the voice came again, louder, insistent. "Hey girl, come here." It was closer, maybe 20 feet, but we couldn't see him. My stomach twisted, a sick certainty settling in. This wasn't a prank. Jake cursed under his breath, and Sarah's hands tightened on the wheel. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and dialed 911, my voice low, as I told the dispatcher about the man, the field, the way he kept calling me. As I hung up, movement broke the darkness. A figure emerged from the field, striding across the parking lot with purpose. He was older, maybe 50, his tan trench coat flapping as he moved. His face was gaunt, eyes hidden in shadow, but his pace was fast, too fast. Sarah gasped, and a customer, who'd been lingering by the door, bolted inside with us. Jake stayed out front, his shoulders squared, but I could see the tension in his stance. The man veered toward the diner's entrance, his hands twitching at his waist, lifting his coat like he was showing something, a weapon maybe. I couldn't tell from inside, but the motion sent a chill through me. I grabbed the phone again, calling 911. Back, my voice cracking as I described him closing in. Jake stepped forward, blocking the path to the door. "You need to leave," he said, his tone firm but steady. The man stopped, his head jerking toward Jake, and then he exploded. "I'll end your life next time I see you," he screamed, his voice raw, unhinged. He kept yanking at his coat, his hands frantic, but I still couldn't see anything. Jake held his ground, but I saw his fists clench, ready for a fight. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the man turned sprinting back toward the field, his coat trailing like a ghost. By the time the cops arrived, he was gone, swallowed by the dark. An officer came inside, his face tired, and took our statements. Jake was furious, pressing charges for the threat, but the officer just shrugged. "He's homeless, not mentally stable," he said. Like that explained everything. We picked him up down the road, but he wouldn't give a name, so we let him go. I stared, incredulous. "Oh, and he's known to carry a knife in his waistband," the officer added, almost as an afterthought. "Call us if he comes back." The rest of the night was a blur. The bars closed, and the diner filled with rowdy patrons, their laughter jarring against the knot in my chest. We didn't hear the yelling again, but I knew he was out there. I'd seen him before, sleeping behind the dumpster at dawn, his coat bundled around him like armor. The field backed up to a middle school, a fact that made my skin crawl. But the cops had been clear. They couldn't do anything unless he hurt someone. I told Jake and Sarah I'd talk to our manager in the morning, see if we could pull his face from the security tapes, warn the other night shift workers. Every time I stepped outside, I felt the field watching its shadows, hiding that voice, that threat, waiting to call again. It was the summer of 2018, and I was 33, living in Chicago's Humboldt Park with my partner Ethan and our German Shepherd Luna. Our apartment was a fourth-floor walk-up in a weathered brick building, one of those low-budget rentals common in a neighborhood caught between gritty charm and creeping gentrification. Humboldt Park was a mix of vibrant street art, loud music spilling from open windows, and the occasional sketchy alley you'd avoid after dark. Our building had 12 units split between two entrances. Ours and the 3 units below us shared a creaky front stairwell, while the other 8 accessed a separate entrance. All 12 apartments connected to a rickety back porch system, with stairs and walkways leading to a rear gate that opened into a narrow alley. From the front stairwell's landings, small windows offered a clear view of the back porches, including our apartment's back door. It was a quirky setup, but it fostered a sense of community among neighbors, especially those sharing our entrance. That connection, as it turned out, saved us. Ethan was a drummer in a touring indie band, often gone for weeks at a time, leaving me alone with Luna. I didn't mind his absences. At first, Chicago's energy kept me busy, and Luna was a loyal companion. But my past cast a long shadow. In my teens and early 20s, I'd been stalked by an ex-boyfriend, a manipulative guy named Derek, who'd turned my life into a maze of fear. His messages showing up at my old jobs, the late-night calls, it had taken years to shake him. Even now, living in a new city with a new life, I worried he'd find me again. That fear was a low hum, always there, spiking whenever something felt off. About a month before Ethan's next tour, a 2-month slog across the Midwest, that hum became a scream. I got a Facebook message from a new account. No profile picture, just a string of random numbers. Still thinking about you. It read, signed with Derek's initials. My blood ran cold. I blocked it, but the damage was done. A week later, my car, a beat-up hatchback, parked on the street, was broken into. The glove box was ransacked, papers strewn across the seats. But nothing valuable was taken. Not the $20 in change I kept in the center console, not my spare sunglasses. Just a bag of Luna's dog treats, half empty, and tucked under the passenger seat. It was so specific, so pointless. It felt personal. Car break-ins weren't rare in Chicago. I'd had my windows smashed a dozen times over the years, usually for loose change or a gym bag, but this was different. The police, as usual, took a report over the phone, their tone bored. "Happens all the time," the officer said. "File a claim if you want." I didn't bother. What scared me wasn't the break-in. It was the treats. Derek had always hated dogs, mocked me for wanting one. Was this his way of taunting me, with Ethan's tour looming? I was a wreck. I told him about the message and the car, my voice shaking, as I admitted how scared I was to be alone. He listened, his brow furrowed, but he didn't get it. "It's probably nothing," he said, his tone edging into frustration. "A random break-in and a creepy message don't mean he's back. I can't cancel the tour. It's too late, and we need the money." I didn't push. He was right about Chicago's crime rate, and I didn't want to seem paranoid. But the fear clung to me heavy and unshakable. I prepared for the worst. I installed cheap security cameras, one in the living room, one aimed at the front door, and bought metal door braces for both the front and back entrances. Luna, sensing my stress, started acting off, her usual playful energy replaced by pacing and whining. Then she got sick, her stomach upset, forcing me to take her out 6 or 7 times a night. Each trip down the 4 flights of stairs felt like a gauntlet. The alley behind our building was poorly lit, and a homeless man had recently started camping on the nearby boulevard. His tarp shelter, a constant reminder of how exposed I was. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me, a prickling sensation that made my skin crawl. Was it Derek, the homeless guy? Or just my imagination, fueled by sleepless nights and Luna's endless diarrhea? Our neighbors were a lifeline. The couple on the 2nd floor, Maria and Javier, always checked in, offering coffee or a quick chat. The 1st floor tenant, a metalhead named Kyle, was a loner, but friendly. His apartment a shrine to guitars and vinyl records. He sold weed and psychedelics on the side, a fact everyone quietly ignored. We'd bonded over Luna, who he'd sneak treats to when he thought I wasn't looking. One day, I noticed the front door wasn't locking properly. Some neighbors left it ajar, letting it click without engaging the deadbolt. It drove me crazy, especially now. I mentioned it to Maria, explaining my stalker situation in hushed tones. "I'm just being extra careful," I said. She nodded her eyes kind. "I'll talk to the others. We'll keep it locked." After that, the door was secure more often, a small relief in my spiraling anxiety. Ethan left for his tour, and I became nocturnal, unable to sleep when the world was dark. Luna's stomach issues dragged on unnatural for a dog her age, and I wondered if my stress was rubbing off on her. Each night, I'd clip on her leash, check the cameras, and brace myself for the trek downstairs. The alley felt alive with shadows, and the homeless man's tarp rustled in the wind, making me jump. I started carrying pepper spray, my hand never leaving my pocket. The morning Ethan was due back a Sunday around 11 a.m. Everything changed. At 8:30 a.m., Kyle's apartment was hit. He'd gone out for breakfast, leaving his door unlocked, a habit he'd never broken. Someone slipped in 8 leftovers from his fridge, took a leather coat and a pair of boots, and left behind a filthy jacket and worn-out shoes. They ignored his expensive guitars and mixing boards, his stash of drugs, even $500 in a cabinet. But they took his college diploma, framed and hanging on the wall, and a set of keys to his apartment, the front door, and the back gate's master lock. It was bizarre, like a burglary designed to unsettle. Kyle discovered the break-in when he got home, and Maria on the second floor was the first to hear about it. "Go tell her," she urged, knowing about my stalker. Kyle knocked on my door just as Ethan walked in, bleary-eyed from the road. I nearly screamed at the sound my nerves shot, but I saw Kyle through the peephole and let him in. The 3 of us stood on the front stairwell, Kyle recounting the burglary in his gravelly voice. "It's weird, man," he said. "They didn't take anything worth money, just my diploma and keys. Who does that?" We talked for 15, maybe 20 minutes, hashing out theories. Ethan, still in his jacket, leaned against the railing, trying to catch up. As we spoke, we heard the front door below creak open and shut. I didn't think much of it. Neighbors came and went all the time. But then, through the landing's window, I saw him. A man climbing the back porch stairs toward our apartment. He was alone, moving with purpose, his steps silent on the wooden slats. No one else lived up there. He was coming for us. He wasn't Derek. I didn't recognize him, but his image seared into my brain. Medium build, maybe 40, with a gaunt face and dark, sunken eyes. He wore a black coat, too big for his frame, and flashy black and white high-top sneakers that caught the light. Not Kyle's stolen boots, but just as out of place. He reached the platform outside our back door and stopped staring through the window. Our eyes met, and time slowed. His expression was blank, unreadable, but his presence screamed intent. He didn't knock, didn't try the door, just stood there, frozen like he'd been caught. Then he moved. Slowly, deliberately, he pulled a cell phone from his pocket, dialed, and spoke in a low voice, his eyes never leaving mine. He turned, descending the stairs, with exaggerated calm, as if trying to play it cool. The second he hit the porch below, he broke into a sprint, vanishing into the alley. My heart was in my throat. Ethan cursed, and Kyle bolted downstairs, phone in hand, dialing 911. I ran to the back porch, Ethan behind me, just in time to see two vehicles, a sedan and a windowless van, peeling out from a derelict building 2 doors down. They tore through the alley, gone before we could blink. No license plates, no chance to follow. Kyle found something else when he reached the alley, a 2x4 cut to about 2 feet, with one end whittled into a handle like a crude paddle. It wasn't random debris. The more I thought about it, the more it looked like a makeshift ram designed to bust through a door jamb. I checked our front door later, noticing faint cracks in the frame, as if it had been forced open and poorly repaired. The pieces fell into place. They'd used Kyle's stolen master key to get through the back gate, positioned someone at our back door to trap me if I tried to flee, and planned to break in through the front. They'd been watching me, probably for days, noting my late-night dwaswalks, assuming I was alone. Ethan's return just 30 minutes earlier was pure luck, a coincidence that likely saved us. The police were useless. They took statements, their tone dripping with condescension. No crime was committed, one officer said, shrugging. Guy on your porch isn't enough to go on. Kyle filed the report since his apartment was hit, while Ethan and I were just witnesses. They didn't care about the cars, the ram, or my stalker. Call us if something else happens, they said, leaving us with nothing but fear. I was done. Our landlord refused to change the locks, claiming it was too expensive, but he let us break the lease. We moved out of Chicago within a month, settling in a quiet suburb with a house surrounded by floodlights and new cameras. I got a second dog, a young shepherd I'm training for protection, and our neighbors, nosy but kind, keep an eye out. Luna's stomach settled, but I never shook the feeling of being watched. I don't know if Derek was behind it or if it was someone else entirely. All I know is that we escaped something dark that day, and I'll never take safety for granted again. I'm 23, a property management assistant in a job that's equal parts rewarding and nerve-wracking. My office is in a rough part of town, a sprawling apartment complex surrounded by pawn shops, liquor stores, and streets where sirens are part of the ambience. I'd sworn off front desk work after a string of unsettling incidents, tenants screaming over late fees, strangers loitering in the parking lot, even a break-in that left me shaken. I'd moved to a back office role, safer and quieter, but when my manager, offered me a hefty bonus to return to the front desk temporarily, I caved. Money talks, especially when you're young and scraping by. That day was a disaster, waiting to happen. I wasn't supposed to be alone. My manager, Tara, called in sick with the flu. My coworker, Jake, had a last-minute family emergency. And another colleague, Lisa, had requested time off weeks ago, something we'd all forgotten until the schedule was posted. I was furious, my stomach knotting as I stared at the empty office. This wasn't just about workload. It was about safety. The property was busy with constant walk-ins for tours, maintenance complaints, and lease signings, and the neighborhood's reputation made solo shifts feel like playing Russian roulette. The front door was supposed to stay locked during business hours, but the lock was faulty, and anyone could waltz in. I'd voiced my concerns to Tara over the phone, my voice sharp with panic, but she was too sick to help, and corporate couldn't spare anyone. Desperate, I called our sister property across town and begged their leasing agent, Mia, to cover for a few hours. She agreed, but she could only stay until an hour before closing. It wasn't ideal, but having anyone, was better than facing the day alone. The morning was chaotic, but manageable with Mia there. We juggled tours for prospective tenants, fielded calls about leaky faucets, and dealt with a tenant who'd lost his keys for the third time that month. Mia was a godsend, her calm demeanor balancing my frazzled nerves. But as the clock ticked toward 4 p.m., she had to leave for a prior commitment. I felt a pang of dread as she grabbed her purse, promising to check in later. "You'll be fine," she said, squeezing my arm. I nodded, but my gut disagreed. I was alone for barely 5 minutes. When the front door swung open, the bell above it jangling harshly, a man shuffled in, clutching a worn duffel bag. He was tall, disheveled, with matted hair and clothes that hadn't seen a wash in weeks. His eyes darted around the room, unfocused, and I instantly clocked him as someone struggling, likely homeless, possibly unwell. I'd seen people like him before, folks down on their luck who'd wander in asking for water or a place to sit. But something about this guy set my nerves on edge. He approached the desk, slamming a crumpled ID onto the counter. The name read Thomas, but I barely registered it. "Hi, sir. How can I help you?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, despite the hairs rising on my neck. "You don't respect veterans," he muttered. His words slurred, his gaze fixed somewhere past me. I blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Can you tell me what you need?" I tried again, gripping the edge of the desk. He didn't answer, just kept muttering about veterans, his voice rising and falling like a broken radio. I was about to repeat myself when the door jingled again, and Lisa, my coworker, who'd taken the day off, strolled in. She'd stopped by to grab some paperwork and say hi, a stroke of luck I hadn't expected. Her smile faded as she took in the scene, me tense behind the desk, and this guy looming with his duffel bag. She walked over her tone, firm but polite. "Everything okay here?" The man didn't like that. His eyes narrowed, and he unzipped his bag, rummaging through it with jerky movements. My heart raced, imagining the worst. A a bomb. Something to turn this bad day into a tragedy. Instead, he pulled out a piece of women's lingerie, faded and torn, and tossed it onto my desk. I recoiled, my stomach churning. Lisa stepped closer, her voice sharper now. "Sir, you need to explain what you want, or you have to leave." He ignored her, digging deeper into the bag. Out came a small plastic box, and from it, an SD card. He leaned over the desk, trying to jam it into my computer's USB port. "No, stop," I snapped, shoving the monitor away. Surprisingly, he listened, but his agitation grew. He rummaged again, muttering, "You don't get it. You don't get it." Lisa and I exchanged a glance, both of us on edge, repeating, "If you can't tell us what you need, you have to go." Then it happened. He pulled a knife from the bag, a rusty hunting knife, its blade glinting under the fluorescent lights. My breath caught, and Lisa and I screamed in unison, "Put it away. Get out." The office felt like it was closing in the air, thick with panic. He waved the knife loosely, not pointing it, but not sheathing it either. His face twisted with frustration. I fumbled for my phone under the desk, texting. Tara, who lived on site, man with knife in office. "Call 911 now." Lisa, bless her, took charge. She didn't touch him, but stepped forward, shoulders squared, making herself look bigger. "You need to leave right now," she said, her voice low and commanding. He hesitated, then shoved the knife back into his bag, still muttering, refusing to budge. Lisa kept advancing her presence, a quiet threat, until he finally shuffled toward the door. We slammed it shut behind him, locking it with trembling hands. Through the glass, we saw him pacing, shouting curses, banging on the door. My pulse was a drum in my ears. He wandered to the convenience store attached to the building, still yelling. Within 30 seconds, 4 squad cars screeched into the lot, lights flashing. We pointed at the store, and the officers stormed in. From the window, we saw him lunge at one of them, flailing wildly. They didn't hesitate, batons out. They subdued him in seconds, pinning him to the ground. I told the police about the knife, and they found it in his bag, along with the lingerie and SD card. I answered their questions, my voice shaky, identifying the weapon and recounting every detail. I didn't press charges. It was clear this man was in a mental health crisis. His actions erratic, not calculated. Jail wouldn't fix him. He needed help, real help. But the DA pressed charges anyway, brandishing a weapon, trespassing assault on an officer. The courts granted me a protective order, a thin shield against my lingering fear. They released him without bail, which terrified me. But he didn't show up to his court hearing. There's a warrant out for his arrest now, and I haven't seen him since. I check the locks twice, scan every face in a crowd, and pray he's gone for good. That day reminded me why I'd left the front desk and why some risks aren't worth the paycheck. 10 years ago, when I was a shy teenager, growing up in a mid-size city in the southern United States, the local mall was the heartbeat of our social scene. The city offered little else. Movie theaters, a couple of bowling alleys, and not much more. For kids like me, the mall was an escape, a place to wander, snack, and feel a flicker of independence. My mom worked at a department store, anchor store, within the mall, and since I had little else to do after school or on weekends, I'd tag along. While she rang up customers or restocked shelves, I'd hole up in the employee break room, a cramped fluorescent lit space that smelled faintly of coffee and microwave popcorn. I'd sink into a plastic chair, lose myself in my Nintendo DS, and let the hours slip by. It wasn't glamorous, but it got me out of the house, spared me from chores, and gave me a chance to soak in the mall's buzzing energy without fully engaging with it. The break room was my sanctuary, despite its flaws. The flickering lights occasionally plunged the room into brief darkness, and the air conditioner hummed like a distant swarm of bees. My mom's co-workers, a mix of chatty cashiers and weary stockroom guys, were kind popping in to check on me or share a bag of chips. They'd tease me gently about my gaming obsession or ask about school, their warmth making the dingy room feel almost homey. On weekends, I'd sometimes convince Mom to let my best friend Ellie come along. Ellie and I were secretly dating, a fact we kept quiet in our conservative town. The mall trips were a covert way to steal moments together, less a date, more a shared adventure disguised as hanging out. While I preferred the break room's solitude, Ellie was restless, always itching to explore. She loved strolling through the mall's polished corridors, weaving past families, teens and retirees, her eyes bright with curiosity. Ellie's love for walking clashed with my introverted tendencies. I'd try to dodge her pleas to roam, suggesting we hit a nearby store to browse or grab pretzels at the food court instead. She'd relent, but I noticed a pattern. She never wanted to linger in the break room. At first, I chalked it up to her hating the room's stale vibe. Maybe the creaky chairs or the outdated magazines stacked on the table. I felt the same about its quirks, so I didn't push. But her unease grew obvious, her glances toward the ceiling, sharp and wary. After a few visits, my patience wore thin. "What's wrong with this place?" I asked one Saturday, setting down my DS. I expected her to complain about the stuffy air or the flickering lights issues. I'd grumbled about myself. Instead, her voice dropped and she leaned closer. "I hear things up there," she said, pointing to the ceiling. "Like footsteps. Someone's moving around." Her words sent a shiver through me. But I tried to stay rational. My mom had mentioned the ceiling space before a maintenance area packed with wiring insulation and HVAC ducts. It wasn't meant for casual strolling. Only the mall's maintenance crew accessed it for repairs. "It's probably just a worker fixing something," I told Ellie, hoping to ease her nerves. "They've got to check the lights or the air system sometimes." She nodded, but her expression stayed tense. "Maybe," she said, "but it doesn't sound right. It's too sneaky." She refused to stay in the break room after that, insisting we stick to the food court's noisy chaos or the mall's open walkways. I didn't love leaving my comfort zone, but Ellie and I had a strong connection built on honesty. If she was spooked, I wanted to understand why. I agreed to her plan, promising we'd avoid the break room for the day. Later that afternoon, while Mom was on her lunch break, I brought up Ellie's concerns. She says she hears footsteps in the ceiling. I said, half expecting Mom to laugh it off. Instead, her face tightened, a flicker of worry crossing her eyes. "No one's been up there today," she said quietly. "Not that I know of." Before I could ask more, she gestured for me to follow her. "Come see something." We left the break room and wound through the store's back corridors to the receiving room, a cluttered space filled with cardboard boxes, clothing racks, and pallets of incoming merchandise. The air was thick with the scent of packing tape and new fabric. The room's layout was an awkward L shape, with one arm used for deliveries and the other leading to a dead end. There, set into the wall, was a metal hatch, the access point to the ceiling. Mom stopped and pointed at the wall below the hatch. My stomach dropped. Gouged into the concrete were deep, jagged marks like claw scratches stretching upward, as if someone had scaled the wall to reach the hatch. The gashes were dark, almost brown, and uneven, some so deep They exposed the wall's rough texture. I stared, my mouth dry. "Is this a joke?" I asked, hoping for a prank. Mom shook her head. "This isn't the first time," she said. "These marks have been showing up for months, every few weeks. We call security, they call maintenance, and they clean it up. But no one's ever found anything up there." She explained that the store didn't keep a ladder on site, too much of a liability. Only the mall's maintenance team could access the ceiling using specialized equipment. The hatch was locked, and the wall was too high and smooth for anyone to climb without tools. Yet the marks kept appearing, defying explanation. Mall security's best guess was a homeless person sneaking into the ceiling, someone agile and clever enough to evade searches. But that theory felt flimsy. Why claw the wall? Why hide so well? The maintenance crew had scoured the ceiling multiple times, finding nothing. No footprints, no belongings, no signs of habitation. Eventually, they stopped investigating, dismissing the marks as a persistent but harmless mystery. The revelation shattered my sense of safety. The break room, once a cozy retreat, now felt like a trap, its ceiling hiding an unseen threat. I stopped going to the mall with Mom after that. If Ellie wanted to hang out, we'd meet at my house, sprawled on the couch with snacks and old sitcoms, or we'd find other places to roam, parks, coffee shops, anywhere but the mall. Ellie never pushed for details, but I could tell she was relieved. She'd sensed something. I hadn't, her instincts sharper than mine. The memory of those claw marks lingered vivid and unsettling, like a Polaroid I couldn't unsee. I'd lie awake some nights, wondering who or what was up there pacing above the break room, silent but present. Nothing ever happened, not to me or Ellie or Mom. No one was caught, no answers found. But the unease stayed with me, a quiet scar from a mystery unsolved. To whatever was crawling through that ceiling, leaving its marks on the wall, I hope our paths never cross. The mall still stands, though the department store's long gone, replaced by a chain retailer. I drive by sometimes, glancing at the building's facade, and wonder if the hatch is still there, if the marks still appear. I don't stop to find out. About 2 years ago, I moved into a new house with my family, a modest 2-story, nestled in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I was a young woman still living with my parents and younger brother, adjusting to life after we'd been evicted from our previous rental when the owners decided to reclaim it. The new place felt like a fresh start, cozy, with a small backyard bordered by a wooden fence. Beyond that fence, up a gentle hill, stood our neighbor's house, its windows looming over our property. From my bedroom window, I could see their balcony, clearly a vantage point that would soon become a source of unease. What started as a strange encounter one night spiraled into a series of events that left me questioning our safety and the intentions of the man next door. The first incident happened on a warm summer evening, not long after we'd settled in. My parents were out celebrating my mom's birthday at a friend's party, leaving me and 3 close friends to hang out at the house. We were responsible enough to be left alone, old enough to know better than to throw a wild party. The night was low-key. We sprawled across my bedroom floor, the lights off to save energy, the TV silenced after a movie marathon. We were chatting quietly, sharing snacks, when my dog, Luna, a scrappy terrier mix, started barking from the living room. Luna was notorious for yapping at anything, a squirrel, a leaf, even her own shadow. So we brushed it off, laughing about her overzealous guard dog routine. But the barking didn't stop. It went on for a solid 10 minutes, sharp and insistent, unlike her usual fleeting outbursts. Then came other sounds, faint but distinct. A crunching noise like footsteps on gravel circled the house, moving along the perimeter of my bedroom wall. We froze, straining to listen. The crunching was joined by a soft, rhythmic scratching, as if someone was dragging their nails across the siding. My heart picked up, and I exchanged wide-eyed glances with my friends. Before we could process it, a deafening bang erupted from the glass sliding door in the living room, followed by another and another, each one shaking the frame. It was like someone was hammering the glass with their fists. We scrambled out of my room, adrenaline surging, and ran toward the noise. Luna was cowering near the couch, her fur bristling, a low growl rumbling in her throat, behavior I'd never seen from her. Through the glass door, we saw a massive dog, its paws slamming against the pane, its teeth bared. Behind it stood a man, cloaked in black from head to toe, his face shadowed. He stood motionless, gripping a leash that tethered the snarling dog. For a moment, we were paralyzed, staring at this stranger on our porch. My friend Sarah snapped out of it, first lunging for the door to lock it, just as the man's hand reached for the handle. "Who are you? What do you want?" she shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. The man didn't flinch. "I don't know," he said, his voice flat, almost bored. Then he turned, tugged the dog's leash, and walked off into the darkness. The whole encounter lasted seconds, but it felt like an eternity. We stood there, hearts pounding, until the sound of his footsteps faded. When our parents returned a few hours later, we spilled the story, our words tripping over each other. My mom was furious we hadn't called her, but I hadn't wanted to ruin her night. My dad, more pragmatic, suggested it might have been a misunderstanding, but the fear in our eyes told him otherwise. We debated calling the police, but settled on waiting, unsure if we had enough to report. 2 days later, my mom spotted our neighbor, a middle-aged man with a wiry build and a perpetually stern expression, mowing his lawn. She marched over, determined to get answers. He admitted it was him that night, claiming his dog had slipped through our gate, and he'd come to retrieve it. He apologized, saying he meant to mention it earlier, but got sidetracked. Mom relayed the story to us, and at first, it seemed plausible. But as I replayed the night in my mind, doubts crept in. Our gate had a heavy clasp designed to keep Luna in and intruders out. It was always locked, and it had been that night I'd checked it myself. The only way his dog could have gotten in was if he'd opened the gate himself. And why had he lingered, circling the house, banging on the door? "I don't know," he'd muttered, felt less like confusion and more like a taunt. The incident gnawed at me. But life moved on. We filed a police report more for peace of mind than expectation of action. The officer took our statement, noted the neighbor's explanation, and said they'd keep an eye out. Months passed without incident, and the memory dulled, overshadowed by schoolwork and the rhythm of daily life. But then one winter night, it happened again. I was in bed, teetering on the edge of sleep, shifting my pillows to get comfortable. The room was dark, save for a sliver of light from the neighbor's balcony, seeping through a gap in my curtains. I sat up, adjusting my blanket, and glanced toward the window. A face stared back at me. It was pressed against the glass, a black fabric covering everything but the eyes, which glinted in the dim light. My breath caught my body frozen, as if pinned by that gaze. The face blocked most of the balcony light, its outline unmistakable. I fumbled for my phone, texting my mom. "Someone's at my window." I heard a faint shuffle outside, like leaves underfoot, and then silence. My mom burst in, flipping on the light and checking the window. Nothing. No footprints. No sign of anyone. But I knew what I'd seen. The neighbor's balcony light was still on its glow now, unobstructed, mocking my fear. After that, I started noticing him. From my window, I'd catch him on his balcony, staring down at our house. He'd sit in a chair, motionless, his eyes fixed on our backyard or my window. Whenever I made eye contact, he'd stand abruptly and disappear inside, only to return minutes later. It became a pattern, 5 minutes 10, always in the same spot, always watching. I stopped opening my curtains, but the weight of his gaze lingered. My parents installed motion sensor lights and a camera, but the footage never caught anything concrete. just shadows at the edge of the frame. We reported it again, but without hard evidence, the police could only warn him to stay off our property. I still live here, but the house doesn't feel like home anymore. Luna's barks carry a new urgency, and I check the gate's clasp every night. I don't know what he wanted that first night, or what he wants now. Was he casing the house, thinking it was empty? Or was it something more personal, more sinister? The not knowing is the worst part. I keep my window locked, my phone close, and my eyes on the hill, waiting for the next time he steps too close. The night wraps around me like a heavy cloak, the highway stretching into a void of twisting shadows. I'm driving Mom's old sedan, the hum of the engine, my only companion, after dropping Dad off at the airport for a late flight. It's past midnight, and the 3-hour drive home feels endless. My GPS glitches, rerouting me onto a narrow, winding back road where no streetlights pierce the dark. The trees loom like silent sentinels, their branches clawing at the sky. Then, out of nowhere, headlights flare in my rearview mirror. A black car, too close, too fast. Blue lights flash, pulsing like a predator's eyes, and my heart lurches. This isn't right. Something's wrong. I'm 23, a young woman navigating life in a small town where everyone trusts the system. Cops, neighbors, the works. But tonight, that trust feels fragile. I'd volunteered to drive Dad to the airport a favor, to ease his pre-flight nerves. And now, I'm alone on this desolate road, the dashboard clock glowing 1:17 a.m. The GPS had betrayed me, pulling me off the main highway onto this forgotten stretch of asphalt, where the only light comes from my headlights and the occasional flicker of a distant farmhouse. I grip the wheel, my knuckles pale as the black car rides my bumper, its presence oppressive like a shadow that's too heavy to shake. The blue lights keep flashing, insistent, demanding. I pull over. My stomach churns. Find somewhere safe. I drive another minute, my eyes scanning for any sign of civilization. A gas station, a house, anything. Finally, a faint cluster of street lights appears around a curve, casting a weak glow over a gravel shoulder. I ease the car to a stop, my heart hammering, and roll down the window. The man who approaches is dressed like a cop. Dark uniform badge glinting, but his movements are off, jerky, like he's in a rush. His face is half hidden in the shadows, but his eyes catch the light, sharp and unblinking. "Ma'am, you know your tags are expired," he says, his voice fast, clipped, like he's reading from a script he doesn't quite understand. I frown. That's weird. This is my mom's car, and she's usually on top of that stuff. I reach for my purse, but something stops me. His radio crackles a burst of static that makes me flinch, and he cuts me off. Got another call. Gotta go. He's already turning, practically sprinting back to his car, the blue lights snapping off as he peels away into the night. I sit there, frozen, my breath shallow. What just happened? Part of me feels relieved. No ticket, no hassle, but the unease lingers, thick and sour. His voice, his haste, the way he didn't even ask for my license. It's all wrong. I drive on the road, stretching into darkness, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds. The trees seem closer now, their branches pressing against the edges of my vision. I try to shake it off, telling myself it was just a stressed-out cop, maybe new, maybe overworked. But the knot in my gut tightens with every mile. When I finally pull into my driveway, the familiar glow of my porch light feels like a lifeline. I collapse into bed, the encounter replaying in my mind, but exhaustion wins, pulling me into a restless sleep. The next morning, I step outside to grab my phone charger from the car. The sunlight feels harsh, exposing every detail I'd missed in the dark. I glance at the license plate, and my heart stops. The tags aren't expired. They're good for another 2 months. I double-check, running my fingers over the sticker, the date clear as day. My breath catches a cold sweat prickling my skin. He lied. The man on the road with his flashing lights and hurried voice wasn't a cop. Or if he was, he had no business stopping me. My mind spirals, replaying his eyes, his rush, the way he vanished. What would have happened if I'd handed over my license, stepped out of the car, followed him into the dark? I tell my mom later that day, my voice shaking as I recount the story. She frowns, her face pale, and insists we call the local police to check. The officer on the phone is calm but firm. No record of a stop on that road. Last night, no officer dispatched to that area. Could have been a mistake, he says, but his tone suggests otherwise. Be careful out there. I hang up my hands, trembling. From that night on, I make a rule: I only pull over in well-lit, populated areas. If I can't find one, I call 911 to verify. That road, those blue lights, that man, they haunt me. A reminder that danger can hide behind a badge waiting in the dark.